But welcome everyone to our event today with the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. My name is Tammy. I'm with the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration. We're so glad that you're able to join us. I can see we have friends that are joining us from Florida and South Carolina today. Welcome to all of our great classrooms that include North Carolina, and to all of our students who are learners at home. We are so glad you're able to be with us. As I said, today is part of Field Ed Stream Series. CALC provides a free program, usually Wednesdays and Thursdays and some Fridays on CILC. You can find out all about our upcoming programs by going to cilc.org/community, and you can sign up for as many programs if you like to. Today, like I said, we're joined by the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. They provide some great programs on the CILC website. They are under the name History Connects, and they have great opportunities for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a link to all of the programs that they have to offer on the CILC website. I encourage you, since this program is only 30 minutes, for you to dive into another program with them and schedule so that you can get a deep dive into a variety of topics. And then last but not least, I always want to tell people to go to the presenter's website, find out more about this great institution. And so here's a link directly to their website, virginiahistory.org. You may think Virginia history doesn't connect to me. I'm in South Carolina. I'm in Florida. I'm in North Carolina. What does that have to do with me? You would be surprised, especially in the United States. America's history, a lot of the time, began in the state of Virginia. So it's a great place to check out and discover all about it. So this time, I'm going to hand it on over to Grace, our amazing presenter. Just a reminder, questions, chat, answers, throw them in the chat. And if all else fails, throw it in the chat and I'll help you with technology issues. Grace, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, well, I'm so happy to be giving this program to you all today and to see so many people joining from around the country. So my name is Grace Powers. I'm the History Education Coordinator at the VMHC, and I see someone said, I live in Virginia. Where is it? It's in Richmond. So I'm streaming to you from Richmond, Virginia. I have already shared my screen and I think you all can see my presentation. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to be talking about the life of a Revolutionary War soldier. So to start off our program, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the reasons that people are joining the Army during the Revolutionary War. We're going to talk about some of the different groups of people that are fighting. But at the end, I have some replica artifacts here that I'm going to get to show you all to give you a better idea of what Revolutionary War soldiers were wearing and carrying with them when they were in camp and going into battle. So that's kind of an overview of what we're going to be doing today. I think, as Tammy mentioned, I'm going to be kind of asking questions throughout the presentation. So it looks like the chat is working. So if I ask a question, I'll wait a few moments and see if people kind of drop some answers in the chat. I'll try to keep them kind of open-ended questions. So, what do you see in this picture? Who can tell me about this? And I'll kind of use your answers to go from there. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So let me go to the next slide. So I see a question in the chat already. What is the Revolutionary War? And that is a great question. So these next couple of slides are going to help us learn a little bit more about it. But the Revolutionary War is going to be the war that ends up establishing the United States. So the United States of America did not always exist. It used to be a colony, and it was run by another country, by Great Britain. And what the Revolutionary War is going to be, it's going to be these British colonists in the 13 colonies fighting against the British Army to gain independence from them, to be able to start their new nation. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, looking at this slide here, we're going to start to investigate the first reason that people are joining the Army. So I want you all to take a look at this picture that I'm showing. And can some people drop in the chat? What are some of the things that you're seeing in this picture? What are some of the things that you notice? Okay, we have a snake. Lots of people are seeing the snake. Anything else? Any words, letters, join or die, right? A snake in pieces, that's a good observation. Somebody said states, right? We have these different letters that maybe are representing the states, right? So you guys are getting all of these different things. This poster here is a poster that was used to kind of encourage people to join the revolution. And it's playing off of this idea that was kind of a superstition at the time, that if you had a snake that was broken into two and you put it back together before sunset, it would live again, right? So they're using this kind of same idea. But as you can tell, this snake is broken into different parts, and each of these parts are labeled with different letters. And as somebody pointed out, these represent what today we think of as the states, but then were the 13 colonies. These abbreviations represent those different pieces. So what this kind of ad here is basically saying is that all of these different colonies are broken apart right now, right? There are these different pieces of the snake, and they need to join together or their cause might die, right? They might not be able to get independence or have a new nation if these colonies don't start to come together. So one of the reasons that people are going to end up joining the Revolutionary War is because they have this sense of patriotism, right? This sort of idea of a new country that they want to fight for. And that's kind of what this image here is showing us. Another thing that people are kind of upset with about Great Britain has to do with this quote here. So this is a George Washington quote. I'm sure a lot of you know who George Washington is. He says, "I think the Parliament of Great Britain hath no more right to put their hands into my pocket without my consent than I have to put my hands into yours for money." Now, we know that Parliament, who is kind of the lawmakers over in Great Britain, they're not actually taking a ship over to Virginia and putting their hands in George Washington's pocket, right? What he's talking about here is something called taxation, right? So taxation is going to be one thing that sort of raises the tensions between the colonists and the British, who are kind of making laws and running the colony. So the British are going to start taxing the colonists. That means when they buy goods, they have to pay a little extra. Like if you go to the Dollar Tree and you buy a little pack of Post-it notes, right? If you go up to the checkout, even if the Post-it notes are $1, you know you're going to have to bring $1 and some change, right? Because there's a tax. That's been around forever, right? It's been around for hundreds of years. And after, or I guess before the Revolutionary War, the British are going to start more heavily enforcing taxes in the colonies. The colonists are going to be pretty upset because they don't actually have a voice in this taxation. They come up with this phrase, no taxation without representation, because it's Parliament and the King of England on the other side of the ocean that are making these laws that affect them, right? So they have this patriotism. They also feel like the British are sort of not giving them a voice and trying to take away some of their rights through taxation. And so these are going to be kind of two of the reasons that men are going to be joining the army. Now, I want to stop sharing my screen for a moment just so that I can show you all some of my replica artifacts here. So there's going to be a couple different things that the British are going to be taxing. So I want to show you some of the things that they're going to be taxing. Now, one of the things that they're going to be taxing is this here. This, which I'll take out, is called a sugar cone. And this is not a sugar cone like you would get at Kona Ice or something. This is actually a bunch of sugar that's shaped into a cone. So sugar is going to be one of the things that's being taxed. You also have your sugar nippers here. This would be what people would be using to kind of take a little bit of the sugar off. So they didn't really have sugar cubes as much back then. It was more using the nippers to take it off. So that's one big thing that's being taxed. Another big thing that's being taxed is going to be what's in here, which may look like a couple different things to you, but this is actually tea. This is called gunpowder tea, because if you kind of look closely at it, these little pellets sort of look like gunpowder. So it's called gunpowder tea. So people are, or the British are going to be taxing tea, right? And we have a couple of other artifacts related to that, right? So a tea strainer is what they would use to pour the tea into to be able to make a cup of tea. And again, one of the big things that's going to be taxed. Another big thing that's taxed is paper, something called the Stamp Act. And colonists are actually going to be so mad about this one that they stage protests, and it actually gets repealed. And you start to see things come out, material objects come out of this time that actually show that resistance, right? So this teapot here, tea is also one of the things that's being taxed, but it says no Stamp Act, right? It's showing that kind of resistance to these other taxes as well. So this taxation, again, really going to make some people mad, and that's going to be why they're joining the army or joining the fight against the British. Now, another reason that they're going to be joining the army is because they get paid. So it's actually going to be a job for some of them, or for all of them. They're supposed to get paid. And this that we're looking at here is something called a muster roll. And this kind of keeps track of different people's names and what different jobs they were doing. So as we have underlined in red here, these are some of the different jobs that that people could hold in the Continental Army. So we have a bombardier. That's somebody who's kind of preparing the cannons. We have gunners. These are people who are firing the cannons. We have drummers and fifers. So these are people who are playing the drums and playing the fife. A fife is kind of like a flute-like instrument. Oftentimes these roles could be actually filled by very young men or even boys sometimes. So there would be drummer boys in the American Revolution as young as 10 to 14 years old. Sometimes fifers could be as young as 14 to 16 years old. And they wouldn't be as much fighting in the battles, but they would be traveling along with the regiments and providing music. And sometimes these drum commands could also be used to direct soldiers. And then the other things that we kind of have pointed out here, underlined here, are different ranks. So we have sergeants, we have corporals. These are going to be different ranks in the army, and they're going to get paid different amounts, right? So the higher your rank, the more you're going to get paid, right? So money is going to be a little bit of a motivator at this time as well, right? So we have patriotism, this kind of taxation or sort of feeling like the British are taking away the colonists' voice. And then we also have money. And these are going to be kind of three big motivators for soldiers to join the Revolutionary War. So I want to stop sharing for a second so that I can get to where I want to be here. So we've talked about some of the reasons why people are joining, but I want to start to talk a little bit about kind of what life was like in camp and what soldiers are going to be wearing in camp. So once they had joined the Continental Army, that's going to be the army of the colonists that are fighting for independence or fighting to be a new nation. They're going to be called the Patriots. So the Patriots are the ones fighting for independence from Britain. They're fighting to make their own country, the United States. And then there's the loyalists. There's people who are loyal to the British Army who are going to fight with the British. These are kind of the two sides that emerge. And the Patriots' army is going to be called the Continental Army. So that's kind of what we're going to look at here, mostly what the Continental Army soldier would be wearing. I'll show you a couple things from the British Army, but mostly the Continental Army. So pictured here, we have two different looks of a Continental Army soldier. So on the left here, we kind of have this official uniform, what you probably think about if you've ever seen a Revolutionary War soldier. All right, we have this blue jacket, so this kind of fancy headwear. We have this tall musket here. So this is what a lot of Continental Army soldiers are going to be wearing. The thing about the Revolutionary War is that the Revolutionary War, as I mentioned, is the patriots versus the loyalists. The loyalists are going to have the backing of Great Britain. It's a really powerful country, a lot of resources. The patriots aren't always going to have as much resources. And so they're not always going to have enough money and fabric and people to make uniforms to make sure everybody has these nice, fancy blue uniforms. So oftentimes what your average soldier is going to be wearing is something more like this. And this shirt here is called a hunting shirt. It was kind of a tannish shirt made of a kind of thicker fabric, sometimes linen, which is lighter, sometimes burlap. And it had these little fringes along the edge. So it's a little bit more kind of camouflage, basic. It's a lot easier to get these materials and make these kinds of uniforms. And at some point, it actually becomes the official uniform of the Continental Army because people like George Washington, who becomes the head of the Continental Army, is going to be recognizing that these are easier to make and easier to get supplied to the soldiers. So the hunting shirt is going to be more common, but as you can kind of see in both of these uniforms, you're going to have a jacket component here. You're obviously going to have pants. The soldiers are going to be wearing leather shoes. And the funny thing about the shoes is that shoemaking technology, not what it is today, right? You can't just log on to the internet and buy whatever pair of shoes you want, right? You have to get them custom made. They're made of leather. And there's not really like a right foot and a left foot shoe. It's just kind of a shoe. And it doesn't come with its buckle. So you actually have to add your own buckles to the shoes. Now, thinking about what it would be like to be a soldier. If you are going to be marching a lot, you're going to be going on really long walks, you're sometimes going to be crossing rivers and streams. Do you think that you would want to wear something like tennis shoes or something like boots? What do you think? You can put it in the chat. Okay, I see one for boots. Some people saying tennis shoes. Boots. Okay, we're going back. Oh, I'm seeing more and more boots, right? Now, the tennis shoes that we have today, maybe you would be able to wear, but the shoes that they're wearing back then, not really tennis shoes, more kind of uncomfortable leather shoes. So not a direct comparison, but right, you're going to want to be wearing boots probably. But as I mentioned, right, a lot of Continental Army soldiers, they don't have a lot of resources to make the best quality uniforms. So instead of having boots, they're going to have these. Can you all see my pointer? Or I guess, Tammy, if you can tell me if you can see my mouse here.
Yes, I am seeing it right
Okay,
over top of you
perfect.
or on the knee. It just camouflaged it a little bit because of the color, but it looks great now. You can see it.
Perfect. So what I'm kind of circling here with my mouse, these are what they would wear over these leather shoes. They're called gaiters, and they kind of acted like boots in the place of boots. So they were made with wool. That was important for two reasons. For one, it was warm. So when it was cold outside, right, they fought through all seasons. That would keep their legs warm, but it was also kind of waterproof. So it takes a lot of water to get wool really, really wet. So that kind of helped insulate their legs and kind of act as boots, even though they didn't have boots. So these are called gaiters, and it's not gator like alligator, it's spelled a different way. But that's kind of what they're going to be wearing on their feet. There's a couple other things that you may kind of notice that they're wearing. Of course, they have different types of headwear, and I'm actually going to show you a completely different hat when I show you our artifacts. They're going to be carrying things like this here. This is called a canteen. Does anyone know what a canteen would hold? What do you use a canteen for? Exactly, water, right? So they don't have plastic water bottles they can buy at the store, right? They use the canteen as kind of their water bottle, and they fill it up using natural water, right? From rivers and streams and things like that. So you're going to have to be carrying around your water container to make sure you can keep having access to water. Some of them are going to be carrying around these knapsacks. It's kind of like a backpack. So I'm sure a lot of you have carried a backpack, you know, if you've gone into school or if you've gone on a trip and you need to carry some things with you, you put it in your backpack. They're going to be carrying kind of all the items that they need with them, right? In marches and in camp. So I wanted to look at these pictures first so you can get an idea of what it would actually look like on a person. But I'm going to stop sharing again because I want to show you some of these replica artifacts and what this would look like from my end. So I want to go through some of the parts of the uniform that we already talked about. The first thing I want to go through is kind of the shirts, right? So under all of their uniform, they're going to be wearing a shirt like this. Now, I'm not very tall. This is a very long shirt, right? I have to like lift it up to be able to get it all the way into the shot. But this is the kind of undershirt that they would be wearing. I know it's probably hard to tell through the screen, but this is going to be made of cotton. So I'm sure a lot of you all have worn t-shirts and things like that are made of cotton, right? It's very light, very breathable. It's also easy to wash. So when you think about some of these bigger coats, they're kind of hard to wash, but if you have an underlayer that you can wash more frequently, that's going to help, you know, keep you clean. So we have a cotton undershirt. That's going to be the main thing here. And then over that, they're going to be wearing a kind of vest. So their vests, like I talked about, the average Revolutionary War soldier might not have access to all the resources to have a nice blue uniform like the one we just saw. So oftentimes they're going to be using materials that are a little bit more kind of natural, right? So this kind of tannish color is made of sort of burlap or kind of thick fabric. That's what they're going to be wearing over their undershirt, and then of course a jacket over that. Now again, this vest here is a bigger one, so this would probably be worn by, you know, a grown man. What do you think about this one? Do you think that this would be worn by a grown man? I'll put it next to me for comparison. No, probably not, right? Who do you think would wear something like this? Maybe a girl, maybe a baby. Okay, we're on the right track, right? So not going to be a girl, but it's going to be a young boy, right? A child. So a vest like this could be worn by a young child. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that the patriots, or the people fighting in the Continental Army, their uniforms are not red. Their uniforms are blue. So a red vest like this would probably be worn maybe by a British person, right? So red represented the British side. But I like to use this vest because it shows you that there were young boys who were also participating in the Revolutionary War. Like I mentioned, a lot of them as drummer boys, right, are kind of traveling around with the army. So they're going to be wearing the vest, they're going to be wearing the jacket over it, pants like we looked at in the picture. And then, as I mentioned with the gaiters, they're going to be wearing these over their legs, right? And you can kind of see here how it points out this way, right? So your foot would go right here. and this would be the kind of front of your foot. And it has buttons all along the side, so you can button it all the way up your leg, right? And it's going to be very thick, keeping them warm, keeping them dry, at least better than their really short shoes, right? Not quite as good as boots, but they're going to have kind of two gaiters. And the ones that we looked at in the picture were black. These ones are obviously tan, right? So it kind of just depends on the wool and fabric dyes available, but the ones we have here are kind of more tannish color. And I mentioned that you're going to have to put on your own shoe buckles. So I want to show you kind of what that looks like. A little bit complicated. It's kind of like a belt loop. If you've ever kind of put on a belt. You can say in the chat, who thinks that they would be really good at putting this shoe buckle on their shoe? Or who thinks it's way too complicated? Maybe. Yeah. I personally would not like to have to figure out how this goes on a shoe. Some of you might be braver than I am. Some people are saying yes. Yeah, exactly. So the last couple of things, yeah, some people are saying too hard, difficult. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. I want to buy my shoe fully made, right? So just another difference between kind of now and then, right? They have a little bit more to do with making their shoes and things like that. So the last couple of things I want to show you, as we have a couple of minutes, are some of the things that soldiers would carry with them. So not as much clothing, but things that they would carry on their shoulders. So the first thing I want to show you, it's a little drab. It's this. This is called a haversack. And it's kind of like a tote bag or sort of like a purse, right? But men are going to be wearing this. This is what they're going to be carrying some food in, maybe some personal items. So a lot of soldiers would have things like diaries or maybe photographs of people back home. Maybe they'd carry some games with them, like playing cards or something like that. And they would use this kind of haversack to hold these. This haversack could also go within the knapsack, the backpack, if they wanted to kind of have one smaller bag and one bigger bag. So that's going to be your haversack, but it can be worn, I guess I didn't demonstrate, kind of over the shoulder like this to carry things with you. The other thing they're going to be carrying with them that I did mention is this. It's a little bit tied up right now. What do you think this is? Exactly. Somebody said it, right? This is going to be a canteen. So ours is a little broken right now. But this strap here would be kind of tied onto this end, and you'd wear it again, like over your shoulder, across your body. This is going to be what they're using to carry water, right? And get water as they're marching along on their marches. So we have that. And then one of the last things I want to show you is this here. Does anyone know what this is? Somebody said a musket. That's a good guess. It's not a musket, but it does have to do with the muskets. Somebody said it. Wow, it holds gunpowder, right? So this is actually a gunpowder horn. So it seems like maybe some of you have learned about this. I didn't catch you off guard. So it's obviously made out of an animal horn, but it's kind of reshaped to have a little area where you can put kind of gunpowder into the top, and then you can use this more narrow end to either go directly into your gun or fill up cartridges, right? And this keeps it dry, right? So soldiers are going to be marching in all types of weather. Like I mentioned earlier, they're going to be crossing rivers, streams, things like that. Their clothes are going to be getting wet. Some of the things they carry might get wet as well. But gunpowder, if it gets wet, won't ignite, right? And then that's a bad thing as a soldier. If you need to fire your gun, you can't have wet gunpowder. So some people would kind of hold their gunpowder in gunpowder horns like this. Now, the very last thing I want to show you all, because I did talk a little bit about headwear, is this hat here. Does anyone know what this hat is called? It's kind of what the hats the colonists would wear. Exactly, a tricorn hat or a tricorner hat. Somebody said beret, not quite a beret, they look a little different. The tri-cornered hat. This is what the colonists often are going to be wearing, right? So it's called tri-corner because there's 1, 2, 3 corners. So this is what the men or the male colonists are going to be wearing. But I have another head wear for you here. I have this. Does anyone know what this is or who might wear this? Kind of goes on your head. It's kind of like a bonnet, yeah. Women, right? So women are going to be involved in the Revolutionary War, not as soldiers, but they are going to be playing roles in camp, right? So there's a lot of women who were, wives or mothers or sisters of the soldiers, and they might travel with the regiments to help them in their everyday life, do things like cooking, doing laundry. Some women were actually paid to follow the camp. So they are going to be playing a role in the army as well, even though they're not kind of fighting on the battlefields. So that's the last thing that I have to show you all. So I am finished up here, but if you all, I know we're like 2 minutes over 1:30, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to stay and answer them. You can put them in the chat. If you need to head off, then that is okay. But thank you all for joining my little presentation.
Thank you, Grace, so much. I'm going to drop links to the upcoming schedule. Of course, links to the Virginia Museum of History and Cultures programs on the CILC website, and of course, a link to their amazing website. I encourage you all to check it out and go in depth on what they have to offer. Everyone's saying thank you, Grace. They loved it.
Great.
That was great. Loved all the artifacts and everything with that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, now you all can go dress as a Revolutionary soldier for Halloween.
Perfect. Well, I think we're set. But if you see something else, you just let me know. People can send emails to info@cilc.org, and I'll make sure to hand them on over to Grace, and she can answer any questions that you may have.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.